It's great to be here tonight. I'm specifically going to talk about my experience as an elected official of an artificial political jurisdiction that is very much interested in our own vested interest of increasing our property tax base. I think one of the things that motivates economic development policy at the local level is certainly the property tax structure in our state. We don't benefit directly when we bring companies to the region, but we do when we bring them to our jurisdiction. So I serve as chair of the Economic Development Committee on the Iowa City Council, and I just want to talk specifically about how we approach economic development locally. And I want to assure you that if you're interested in influencing economic development policy at the local level is probably where you have your greatest influence. I believe that our economic development policies in the city of Iowa City are very reflective of our community, very reflective of some skepticism about incentives, and we are very, I would say, pretty cautious about how we entice and incent businesses to come to our community, and I'm actually very proud of that. We have quite a bit of transparency and accountability when we do provide incentives, and I'm proud of our policies, but I'd certainly be open to hearing what your concerns might be about those policies. We know that we have great natural strengths in Iowa City of attracting businesses to our community. We have great infrastructure, transportation system. We have a very talented, educated workforce. I think one of the drawbacks of that workforce is we hear from companies that our low unemployment rate is somewhat daunting when they consider moving to this area, because can they attract the workforce that they need with such a low unemployment rate? Are people hungry for jobs here? And we assure them that it's a great workforce, so hopefully that they would consider our area. Our policies at the city are overviewed in our comprehensive plan, which our comprehensive plan for community deals with land use as well as a lot of other approaches to the community. So when we look at our policies that we develop on an annual basis and we look at our strategies, we refer back to our comp plan and make sure that these are in alignment. The Economic Development Committee, which is a 3-member committee, all council members, makes recommendations, reviews our annual policies, makes recommendations to the full council, talks to businesses who are interested in working with us on some kind of incentive programs or with our other programs, and we make those recommendations to full council. Our current economic development policies, and I'm just going to broadly outline these, and they are pretty broad. Diversify and increase the property tax base, there it is, up front, number 1, by encouraging the retention and expansion of existing industries and by attracting industries that have growth potential and are compatible with existing businesses and industries. I mean, once again, growing the tax base is based upon our current property tax structure in this state. Have you gone through property tax structure? I'll just tell you, if you own a residential property, there's something called the rollback, and you will only pay a percentage of the assessed value of that property residentially. If you own commercial property, it's taxed at the full rate. So we get 100% of the assessed tax value of commercial properties, whereas we only get a percentage, and that varies year by year as determined by the state. So having a lot of commercial property tax base is a good thing for a city in Iowa. And we can talk about that. That's something that you might want to consider if you have concerns about economic development policy, is how that incents cities to behave. We develop available labor force consistent with the needs of employment opportunities. Our third broad policy is provide and protect areas suitable for future industrial and commercial development. That's directly related to how we do land use, good land use. Continue to cooperate with existing local and regional organizations to promote economic development within Iowa City. So we do work with our regional organizations to attract businesses to the area. Improve the environmental and economic health of the community through efficient use of resources. And then we have a policy that says consider financial incentives and programs to facilitate achieving the above. So we have a policy that we will consider business incentives. Our strategies that we've recently adopted, retention and expansion of primary sector existing businesses, that is to say businesses that do interstate commerce, and attract new businesses to Iowa City. I want to emphasize that we focus on the retention and expansion of current businesses in our community. I think that's our first priority in those strategies. Support the development of downtown to ensure a healthy mix of retail, services, entertainment, office, residential, lodging, and nightlife. Assist in the development of entrepreneurial businesses in Iowa City, and work to improve the safety and attractiveness of business neighborhoods to maintain our ability to attract and keep businesses and keep the workforce safe. Those are our current economic development strategies. We also have some measurables within those strategies. The current projects that we are working on, and you may have heard about some of these, we are looking at an area on the east side of our community called Towncrest that has experienced some, I would say, property degradation. It used to be a really thriving medical office area, and it needs some redevelopment, we've identified. And so we've gone through some planning for that area, engaged business owners as well as residents in that area to do some community meetings about what the redevelopment could look like in that area. We're also, as a result of the flood, we're looking at an area we call riverfront crossings, which is down near the county administration building and some areas in our North Wastewater Treatment Plant area that were flooded. We planned a huge redevelopment that would be a mix of residential and commercial in that area that would incorporate some green space adjacent to the river that would be better for flood management down there. And it's probably, you could use the term smart growth is what we're looking at, a smart growth neighborhood down there. We currently have a downtown business incubator feasibility study. We are looking at the possibility of doing a business incubator in downtown to support the entrepreneurial development, specifically in the area of creative technologies. We haven't decided exactly what the sector focus might be, but that was one that was mentioned. We are looking at a moss green urban village, which is on the north side of town, which would be an office park that's developed with environmental principles, lead principles in the development, and it's actually ag land that's being developed into an office park adjacent to Pearson's property out there. And then, of course, the expansion of the southeast side industrial park, which we are trying to attract wind energy companies to that area. Those are some of our current projects. So let me tell you about some of the tools that we use in Iowa City for economic development. We, of course, use tax increment financing. This is a tool, as you know, that's available to cities for economic development. We currently have 8 districts within the city where we can use this tool. With the current projects that we're looking at, there's a possibility that we will expand to 10 TIF districts in the community. How we use TIF is we do provide an annual report to council on how those businesses are performing, and this has been a very effective tool for Iowa City. In fact, 2 projects recently rolled off of their TIF agreements early, which made our fiscal year 2011 budget much easier to deal with, because the impact of those projects and their increase in the property tax base really it showed up in our fiscal year 2011 budget. We didn't have to do the budget cuts that we anticipated, and we didn't have to institute a franchise fee at the level we anticipated because of those projects rolling off of their TIF contracts. We typically use, and this is just a broad guideline, I've probably been on council when we've done about 4 TIF projects. We typically use short time frames, which is something that our community is very interested in. We sunset those projects pretty quickly. The businesses pay the taxes, and we do a tax rebate, and the portion contracted for, and if they meet their contractual obligations, requirements in their TIF contract, then those taxes are rebated back to them. So we rarely, in my time on council, we've never, but we rarely do upfront payments to businesses. We typically use the rebate. We typically cap the total payout, so if the increment grows faster than projected, the project rolls off of the TIF contract more quickly, which is a benefit to us all, as I just cited in the example of our 2011 fiscal year budget. And I would say that each contract I've participated in has been different. We did develop a contract with a developer. The project will probably not come to fruition, but it did have some green elements in it. And this was a result of discussion with community members who are very interested in seeing that begin to show up in our TIF contracts. We use TIF contracts very carefully because we know that it's a controversial topic in our community, and our elected officials are very cautious about how we use that. Another tool that we use is we fundamentally, as a city, have an economic development fund. Basically, we primarily use this to partner with the Iowa City Area Development Group, which does recruitment, business recruitment for primary sector businesses, as well as keeps in communication with our larger area employers and works with the state on other incentive programs. So they're our partner in that project, and we use our economic development fund to support our membership investment in that organization. We also have at the city a micro enterprise fund, and this is from our community development block grant funding, our CDBG funding. And this provides no or low interest loans to qualifying businesses, and the qualification typically for these funds is a low or moderate income employee, or typically it's a low or moderate income owner. And so we've started or helped start, we have funds in a lot of small businesses around the community. The objectives of these projects is employment of low or moderate income earners, and typically those are the people who are interested in starting their own businesses. Some of the businesses you may recognize: Oasis Falafel is one of our projects, Alibaba is one of our projects. We do a lot of restaurants in this. Lorena, which is a restaurant on the southeast side, is one of our projects. Deluxe Bakery is one of our projects, and then Homex Studio. All of those were started with micro enterprise loans through that was part of their initial financing for their startup. So we basically have these overarching policies. I would say that we are probably not as proactive as some communities because we do enjoy some natural attractiveness. I would say, working at the state level with my colleagues in smaller communities, that we do not probably work as hard to recruit new businesses here. We try to work very hard with our current businesses here and have done some TIF funding for expansions of projects, and we're pretty proud of our relationships that we have with local employers. So your policies can really guide you in a business-friendly climate, but I think economic development is an art as well as a science, and Mary said that it was based upon relationships. And at the city level, I think one of the most important things is to have good relationships with your businesses throughout the community, and that's generally with staff. Staff members generally work on those relationships with our businesses. Even when there are businesses that don't necessarily pay property tax, we understand that there are benefits from those businesses being in our community. For example, the jobs that they provide. And I'm going to give an example of something that I would deem an economic development activity that doesn't really fall into any of our policies, but I know that staff is currently working with the VA hospital, which is a nonprofit. There's no property tax benefit for us, but they employ quite a few people, and they employ quite a few people at pretty good wages. So it's a benefit to the community to have that facility here in Iowa City. We know that statewide, one of the three VA hospital facilities, there's one in Knoxville, there's one in Des Moines, and there's one in Iowa City. One of these facilities is going to be closed. We don't want it to be the one in Iowa City, obviously, because that would be job loss and would have an impact on our local economy. Currently, the VA hospital here is positioning to be more attractive to being one of those that survives those closures, and they want to expand. And so they're working with city staff to find temporary locations for parking for their employees throughout the community, and we're providing some, and I know some businesses are providing some of those temporary parking locations so they can do their expansion, so they can build their parking facility. This is not something that would fall under our economic development policies, but it's just smart relationship building to make sure that we maintain those jobs in our community. So when you think about policies, and then you think about the attitude of your staff, I think that that's a very important factor in what makes a business-friendly climate. In addition to all the other sorts of infrastructure and quality of life things, considering how open your staff is to working with major employers, whether they're not-for-profits or for-profit businesses, makes a huge difference. So I look forward to your questions, and I would be happy to talk all day about what we do here in Iowa City to support economic development.